Great. Well, I think we're good to go. That was good to have that little exercising and deep breathing before, because I'm so far out of my comfort zone doing this kind of Zoom stuff that the deep breathing was very helpful for me. So hopefully everything should go to plan. We've got about 45 minutes, but just to introduce myself, my name is Lindsay Hodgson. I work for an organisation called Catch Impact. Actually, it's less of an organisation and more of a bunch of consultants and associates who specialise in social impact. So we do things around social impact and monitoring, evaluation, things like that. And we work very closely with superhighways for a number of years now. And one thing that we're doing with them at the moment is doing a bit of research around databases or CRMs that are around and talked about in the charity sector or in the non-profit sector, to help us help you really make decisions about where to go and what to do when it comes to choosing a database or a CRM. I should say to you now, the cards on the table, that we can't tell you which one to choose in this session. So if that means you want to drop out and go and join a different group, so be it. But what we want to kind of bring home is the idea that actually it's more about the process that you have to go through when choosing a database, rather than the product that you choose. Obviously the product that you choose is important, but the process is the thing that's going to get you on the way. So we're going to talk about what we mean by database in this session, because there's a million different types of databases and CRMs, and you've probably come to this session with a good idea about what you mean, but we'll clarify what we mean in the research that we're doing. And then we'll talk to you about a process that we've come up with. It's a 7-stage process, and we'll talk to you about each of those 7 stages. And then we'll talk to you a little bit about the research that we're doing at the moment. And I think Kate and Sarah will be sending out links to some of the things that we'll be publishing shortly, but we're just going to give you kind of sneak peeks in this session about what we're doing, and therefore you might kind of want to follow us with the resources that we're producing. We were going to do a Zoom poll, but I have to say I'm totally, like I said, out of my comfort zone with Zoom, and I'm not sure if I've got time to get Kate to start faffing about with putting up polls and things. So actually what I'm just going to do is leave it as is, and just ask you the question just to jot down on a piece of paper. I'd be interested to know if there are other answers to this, and if there are other answers, maybe throw them into chat, or even throw the kind of answers that you would choose from this list into chat as well, just so that we can get a feel for what people do with their data currently. But what we mean by this question, how do you currently deal with data, is I sometimes feel like there's a data explosion in people's organisations, especially when it's time for annual reports and funding bids and all sorts. Scrabbling around for bits of paper, scrabbling around for spreadsheets. And yeah, we'd be interested to know how people are dealing with data at the moment. Are you still on pen and paper? Are you scrabbling around in a million different spreadsheets? Are you using some form of online tools, so surveys or sort of registration or referral forms, things like that? Do you have a couple of different databases in your organisation? Maybe you're a slightly larger organisation, you might have a fundraising or donor management database, and then some other ones that you're using in different parts of the organisation. Or are you actually at the stage where you've got one big database, either that is working well for you, or perhaps not working not so well? Or is there something else that you're doing currently to deal with your data? The next question that, again, we were going to ask you on a Zoom poll, but we'll just think about here. And again, I think this one is probably even more interesting to find out if there's anything other going on, because these are the things that we tend to hear the most from people. What are your biggest challenges when you're thinking about implementing a database? We hear quite a lot that people don't know where to look, like where do I go? There's a million things. If I do a Google search, how do I know that the reviews that I'm reading or some of the stuff that I'm reading is relevant to me, or that I can trust that this is a kind of impartial review? Some lack of clarity around the true cost. A lot of databases tell you that they might be free, and then you get further down the line and you realise, oh, it's only free up to a point, or the whole thing is free but you're going to need to pay for some support. You could be at the stage where you just think, we do need a database, but I don't know what on earth it is we actually need it for. And you've probably got a lack of time to be thinking about all of this. Maybe there's no one person in the organisation who's able to lead on this, either as a as a single role or as part of their job. And really, probably difficult to understand what each of these systems offer. You might have heard about a database or a CRM system and you think, oh, have a look at that, and you Google it, you go onto their website, and trying to navigate it and understand really what it is that they offer that you need can be quite difficult. And then obviously lack of budget, because unless you're getting a free version, which we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of doing a little bit later on, you're going to need some money for this, and sometimes you might just need to buy, time. So lack of time and lack of budget often come hand in hand. So yeah, anything else to add to that list, do throw into chat. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. But let's crack on just with our description of what we mean by a database. So working with Superhighways very, very closely on this, we're often working with smaller community organisations, voluntary organisations in the charity sector. And one thing that we hear time and time again is that what these organisations most want help with is capturing data about their service users and the impact of their programmes. So we're referring to this in this session and in some of the resources that we're going to publish as a case management system. We've kind of steered clear of using the word CRM, because there are CRMs out there for all sorts of things, like fundraising and marketing and sales and managing your donors, managing your members. And we just wanted to differentiate in this series that what we're focusing on here, and we've done it with a little graphic at the bottom of the screen there, is we're focusing on the people you work with, how they engage with you. So you're probably collecting things at the moment on spreadsheets around the demographics of the people that you work with, how they engage with you, who comes to your services and how frequently, and then the impact of that. You might be doing so through paper feedback forms sometimes, or maybe online surveys. So what we're focusing on is a database that manages all of that for you and does magic things in the background. Some of the systems that we're going to talk about do offer kind of add-on modules around that. So modules that manage other groups of people, like your members, your donors, your partners and volunteers. And we will be kind of differentiating that when we, in a little bit later on, talk about the actual systems. So some do offer that as connected modules, and then others are simply offering you quite a simple case management system. So it's kind of up to you to think, well, we probably do need it to incorporate these things, or actually we don't. Our time pressured thing is finding this kind of case management system. So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to show you a short video about an organisation that Superhighways have worked with, Homestart, to talk about their journey about database of selecting and implementing a database. It's only a few minutes long, but I think it'll get us in the mood. So hopefully I've shared the video feature and this will work.
It's fine.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Karen McLean from Homestart, Richmond, Kingston and Hounslow. We recruit parent volunteers and we match them up with a family who are going through a hard time, and they visit them every week for a couple of hours. We work with families that have children under 5, so it's all families in those vital preschool years. The organisation was at a point of change, so we were moving from working in one borough to 3 boroughs. So we were already going through change, and we were thinking about how we did what we did and how we could build and improve on it. And we introduced a new IT digitally based day-to-day case management system. So that records all our contacts with families, provides up-to-date information for the volunteer and ourselves in the office, so we've got a good grasp on everything that's happening. Before we had the system that we're using now, we wrote everything down in about 4 different places. When it came to do our monitoring and evaluation, it was quite time consuming because we had to go to lots of different sources of information and then pull it all together. Whereas now having it all in one system means that we can cross-reference things much better. So for example, we're looking recently at the statistics around single parents, and we identified that the incidence of mental health was much greater in the single parent families that we support. We would never have been able to evidence that from the way we stored information before. We're all part-time, so it's a busy team and there's lots of sort of coming and going. So it's really good that we can work far more efficiently and also enable staff to work more flexibly out and about. We could see very quickly, as soon as we introduced the new system, that the efficiency is more than made up for the investment that we'd made in the system. I think what's fantastic about the system is it gives us that evidence, and we can see really clearly when we work with a family the difference that we've made to their lives on lots of different levels. That's really important for funders. Funders are looking for evidence to show the value that their funding is making and the difference it's making to families' lives. And we can also share that with the families, so we can show them, you know, how they felt and how they described their lives when we first started working with them, and how that changed over that period of time. And that's really empowering for families, and it also helps kind of build their confidence. We work very closely with our other neighbouring home starts across particularly London, and we're part of a national network of home starts. And as a result of the work we've done, we shared that across our network, and another 7 home starts are now using the same system, which is really great because that will enable us to share information, and we can start to apply for joint funding bids. I often say I don't think we could have moved from working in 1 borough to 3 boroughs without doing this piece of work. It's just freed the staff time up to just be able to spend directly with families, which is what we're all here for, and that's so important to us.
Brilliant. If any of you were in Top's animation session this morning, you might have recognised a style. We worked with community filmmaker Top Foster to put that case study together.
Yeah, it's a really good case study, and I hope that resonates with people. I think the 2 key takeaways from that is that the investment is worth the hassle, I think, was one of the points that she was trying to get across, because this is a big project, and it might feel like, you know, there is a lot of hassle that's going to come from it. You have to change perhaps some of the ways that you operate. You're going to have to do a lot of techie stuff. You're going to have to talk to a lot of companies. But I think what Karen was trying to get across was that hassle was worth the investment, and also that actually it enabled their staff to kind of do their job better. It freed up their time to do their job better. And I don't know if I'm just teaching grandmother to suck eggs by telling you guys this, because I think you probably think this already. The difficulty is getting yourselves up and running on the journey. But yeah, hopefully that was just a little bit of inspiration. The next slide gives the 7 stages of our process that we believe what needs to happen when you're implementing a database. I've just highlighted stage 4 there, because that is the stage at which we hear most people wanting to start the journey, or most people come to us and say, can you help us? We want a database. Which one do we choose? And actually, that's only a small part of this entire process that needs to be done. Kind of 60% is our estimate of work that needs to come before that, and then 10% of work around actually choosing it. And then there's quite a big chunk of work that comes after that as well. So I don't throw this up here to daunt you. I just throw this up here to say that, you know, we are trying to do as much as we can to help with the research that we're doing, and that we want to help people make good decisions. But also, I think what we need people to do is reframe the idea of choosing or implementing a database. We need kind of people to see that it is worth doing this big chunk of work before you get to the stage of thinking about selecting or developing a database. So I'll just quickly go through each of these 7 stages with you, and I should say that we're publishing some more detailed information based on this process in the coming weeks. So I think Kate and Sora will be sending around links to those resources afterwards. So don't worry if you don't scribble everything down, and there will be much more to come. Okay, so the first stage, the idea of the scoping phase. Again, this one is the one that kind of requires you to stop and think and make time, because it does take time to do this, but it requires you to kind of zoom out of your organization, hover above it, and think like holistically about how you currently do things. We often hear, I think I said at the start, that perhaps people are collecting data around this kind of case management journey, but it may be in sort of 3 different spreadsheets, one about your service users, one about the services you're delivering and how they interact, and then one about the feedback, but they don't all kind of link up. Or we hear that people do have a database, but it's not really working for them, or the person that set it up has since left, and now we're all just sort of wandering around in the dark, not knowing how to change things or use it properly. So at this point, it's interesting to think about whether or not you just pull the plug and start afresh if you have got a system that's not really working for you, or whether or not that system would actually work for you if you had a bit more investment. And that might be an investment of time on your part to really refresh yourself around the system or get to know it again. It could be an investment of money. Perhaps you're functioning on a free version of the database, and actually some of the functionality you need is in the paid versions. Or it could be an investment, again, of kind of money or expertise by getting somebody in from the outside who understands this system a bit better. Where you find your time, money, and perhaps equipment, I'm not sure of the answer to that, but you'll find the answers, I think, as you take this time and you sort of zoom out and dig around what we're doing at the moment and how can we change that. The other thing to think about at this stage is that first sort of question that I posed as to whether or not you do just want a case management system where you're thinking about your service users and the impact that you create for them, or whether or not you want to incorporate more people and more functionality in your database. So really that's looking at each of the functions of your organization, seeing what it does, seeing how they're coping with data at the moment, and seeing whether or not a kind of a one system would be beneficial for everybody. And then the other thing to think about at this stage is the cultural and operational side of your organization. How are you going to bring everybody on the journey with you, given the kind of culture of your organization? Thinking about people's technical skills, thinking about the way that people are sort of hungry or less hungry for change within the organization, and bringing people on that journey with you. So that's your scoping phase. Excuse me. Your planning phase is also really important, and we wouldn't suggest that you dive into choosing a database before you do this, because what you have in your database is kind of necessarily dictated by your thoughts around your strategy, your theory of change, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and what kind of data you want to collect to demonstrate whether or not those things are being achieved. So this kind of like theory of change thinking has to come before you think about implementing a database, because that will really help you inform what data it is that you need to be collecting on that database. And then we do need a key person responsible for it. So depending on your size, you may or may not, this may or may not be someone's entire role. It might be someone's role for a short-term contract, or it might be that you are asking somebody already in the organization who either has the skills or the inclination to learn about this kind of stuff, to take on the responsibility of gathering the information within your organization. So, finding out some of the must-haves of your database, finding out some of the nice ifs, and then thinking about some of the things that might make it easy or hard within your organization to implement this database. There's got to be a key person responsible for holding all that information. And then further down the line, that key person's got to be taking that information to the database companies to find out if their product can actually deliver what it is that you need. It gets difficult if that information is spread around across the organization. So think about that key person. And then, this is in the planning phase, is also when you need to think about whether or not you do need to try and start making some early changes to some of your culture or operations to help the kind of implementation of the database run a bit more smoothly. So I think in the Home Start video, they talked about at the end of it, like the support workers could really see the value of the database because it opened up their time to actually spend more time with families. So kind of doing a good sell on how the database is actually going to help rather than hinder their operations, because there can be some apprehensions around that. So finding out what people's apprehensions are and then getting them involved in the co-production of the database as much as possible. And I think in the next section, or possibly the one after, is the next section, we're going to talk about how you can get people involved in a really helpful way that not only makes them feel involved in the design, but actually helps you when it comes to specifying what you need in your database to your database company. So we'll move on to that next slide. So this is your specification slide, and the bottom point on this slide is the one that I was just talking about a really useful tool that can get people on board, and that is talking about user profiles. So on the next slide, I'm going to actually just get you guys to take a few minutes away from the screen and get your pen and paper out and see if you can write some down for yourselves, because it's a really useful way of finding out what it is that different people within your organization need from the database, because different people are probably going to need different things. So this is where you, in your specification stage, you really need to narrow down on the things that you must have this in your database, otherwise the whole system is pointless for you, and then some other things that it would be nice if it did this. And you can take those to some of the database that your companies that you're talking to and see if they can offer those to you. So you'll need to be thinking about two types of requirements. One is your functional requirements, so how the database kind of actually works, how different people use it, how data goes in, how it comes out, whether you need kind of mobile functionality, whether if you are getting a kind of larger system that involves donors and volunteers and things, whether it's a database that you want other people outside your organization to interact with, or whether it's kind of a closed database where it's just people within your organization using it. All of that comes under your functional requirements. And then the technical requirements is the real nitty-gritty about, we need this field that, you know, collects this data about the boroughs that people live in. We need this page about this program that we run, and then how those things all link together and the reports that you need to come from that. Excuse me. So all of this needs to be done before you even approach a database provider. And some people, sorry, some people say to us, well, we've spoken to a database company already and they can take us through this whole, these first 3 stages. So let's just go with them. They can take us through it and then we'll just go with their product. But that's a bit of a dangerous thing to do for 2 reasons. One is that it can sometimes be quite difficult talking to people who want to sell you their product if you don't know exactly what it is that you need. So I kind of think of it like choosing a mobile phone contract. Like there's a billion different mobile phone contracts out there that will suit everybody. And if you don't really know how you use your mobile phone or what it is that you need, it's quite easy to walk into Carphone Warehouse and a nice man tells you that you can have unlimited calls and unlimited data, and you get sold on that idea thinking, oh yeah, I probably could call my mum more often or whatever, and then actually you realize that you only ever use your phone for text messages. So you kind of got sold onto the idea that you might need these things in the future, but actually the core of what you need it for, sending text messages, they're going to be charging you £1 a text message or something like that. So it's better that you go to a database company having done all this work yourself, so that you know exactly what it is that you need and you can ask them, can your product do this, rather than you going in not really clear about what you need, and they can very easily sell you all the functionality of their product. Yeah, so that's why I would get you to do that for one reason. And the other reason is that we often hear, if people are going to database companies straight away without having done this, that they do all this work with a database company. They take you through stages 1, 2, and 3. They've sold you the idea of their product. And it's only when you get further down the line to stage 6 or 7, when you're implementing the database, that you find out that, oh, actually, it can't do X, or it's going to cost us Y. And you think, I've spent so much time and investment with this company talking about what I need, what it is that theirs can do. And I'm sort of hesitant to pull the plug and think I'm going to have to start all of this all over again with another database company. So if you do all of this, stage 1, 2, and 3, before you go to them, you can quite easily slap down what it is you need and push them as to whether or not their product can do that. And if there's, if they say no, you can very easily say, okay, thanks very much, and take your requirements to another company. So that's why we would say do this yourselves rather than do it with one of the companies that are offering it. Okay. Let's give you guys a little screen break and show you what we're talking about when we talk about creating user profiles for your databases. So this is a really nice structure that superhighways use. And what it is when you're getting everybody involved in designing the database, is asking all your different types of people that work in your organization, for you and how you do your job, what is it that you need the database to do? So we use these 3 sentences as a structure. So as a X type of person, I want it to do X type of thing so that I can, derive whatever value it is that I'm trying to get from it. So we've got a great example below. Again, I think this is Super Highs that worked with this organization. And one of the support workers that they worked with had a really simple idea about what the database needed to do for them. As a support worker who organizes the food bank deliveries, I want to be able to produce a list of beneficiaries and their requirements for each ward in the borough so that I can know how much, what and how much is needed for each ward, so that I can pack up the parcels and map the addresses and give over to the delivery drivers. So that is really great. You know exactly what that type of worker in your organization is going to be using the database for, and that will be completely different to perhaps somebody who's writing your funding bids or somebody who is managing things at the organization at a higher level. So we've just given another example. I'll leave you guys to read this yourselves here. These are 2 different types of ways that you could describe it. So giving names to your user profiles is often really helpful, kind of brings it to life. And also in this example, we've given what people feel comfortable with, what they can and can't do, and what they do and don't need. So this is as you start to kind of beef out your user profiles. But I'll take you back to the previous one. And if you just want to take 5 minutes and think to yourself, maybe it's easier to write this as yourself in the first instance, or you could write this as another role in your organization, or a few different roles, however many you can get down in 5 minutes. Okay, I think I'll just interrupt you guys already there because I'm conscious of the time, but now you have this kind of idea and this template. It might be something useful to come back to, and again we'll be publishing the resources. So hopefully that just gave you a little idea about how even to get started about thinking about what it is that different people need from your database. So let's go back into our slideshow. Ta-da! We're finally at the stage that you probably all joined the session for in the first place, which is tell me which database to choose. And again, we can't do that. But what we're doing as part of this research is trying to understand the different types of databases that are available to people and give you some ideas about how they work and the pros and cons of those things. So again, this will be published shortly, but 4 kind of tips that I would give you at this point is to, I haven't written them on this slide, so I apologise, but you might want to scroll them down. One is to make the most of any free trials that are out there so that you can dig in and have a look at kind of even as something as simple as what it looks like, because what it looks like has quite a big impact on whether or not people are going to use it. Contact the companies for walkthroughs and demos. Most people offer a demo. You just fill in an online form and they'll give you an online call for half an hour and walk you through it. Have a look at the testimonials or the customers page that is on their websites. See if there are organisations like yours on their existing customers page. That's always really useful. And then think about whether or not you know anyone in that organisation or feel comfortable just sort of contacting that organisation cold to say, looks like you're using X database. Could you give me an idea of what do you think of the product? That's always useful. And then the last thing is just to constantly have database on the brain. So when you are in and around your networks, kind of like today at Impact Aloud, when there's other organisations probably thinking the same as you about not knowing where to start or needing a database, just have it on the brain, get talking to people, see what they're using and see if what they learned about that product and the process as they went through it. So the next slide shows you this kind of initial or very high level table that we've put together about some of the products that are out there. When we publish this, we'll be showing you much more detail about how these systems work, what is unique about some of these systems, what differentiate them between each other, some of the pricing points of them. So we are going to go into quite a lot of detail because we kind of want to sort of shorten the rabbit hole. I think that everybody has to go down to find out whether or not this product is suitable for them. So hopefully you can see this. I'm not sure if it might be too small for the screen. So there's a lot of information on there, which I'm not going to talk through in huge detail, because you'll be getting the slides, you can have a look for yourselves. But the way that we've broken it down is we talk about the big players. So by the big players, we probably mean some of the things that you've heard of before. That is, you can build databases in Microsoft Dynamics. Salesforce have a non-profit pack that they offer, and then there's Civi CRM. These are really big and complex systems, which are great, but you probably will need some support if you're thinking of implementing one of these systems, but they can provide you with a kind of an organization-wide database. The other sort of type of database that we've put in here is a kind of new addition to the database world, which is a build your own offer. So the best way that we can describe these is a kind of drag and drop interface, almost like using SurveyMonkey, where you can kind of choose the types of questions that you want, drop them into a form. And the difference here is that you are linking up each of your forms that you've got. So you might have a form for people registering, and then a registration form or a register that you run when they attend, and then kind of their feedback. And these platforms allow you to link each of those forms together in a database way that other sort of survey platforms don't allow you to do. So there's a bit of a learning curve here. Like, they are pretty simple. They don't require you to learn any code, but there is a learning curve, and the real question is whether or not it's worth you guys building something from scratch that may already exist as an offer out there that caters for kind of most of your needs. The next group of databases that we're looking at in the blue section is what we're calling an all-rounder database. So these are specifically built for the charity sector, whereas these other databases, with the exception of Civi and the not-for-profit arm of Salesforce, they're kind of just more generic databases. These ones in blue, Simply Connect, Lamplight, Views, Charity Log, Better Impact, they are built for the charity sector, and in these cases you purchase the software and then you deal directly with people at that software company to give you support to implement it, and then with any support that you need down the line. So I should have said, with the big players at the top, it's probably quite unlikely, if you're a small organization, that you have the skills in-house to implement these types of databases. You're probably looking at having to get some external support for that. And each of those big players have a provider list that you can go to and kind of work with one of their experts to help you implement that. So there's kind of a middleman there. You're not dealing directly with those companies, with Microsoft and Salesforce. You're dealing with the expert providers. Whereas with these off-the-shelf all-rounders in blue, you will be dealing direct with that company. So again, there's pros and cons to think about there. Then the kind of, oh, and I should say that in blue, we've called these an all-rounder because most of these databases offer more than just a case management module. So they'll offer you to be able to track things about maybe your funding or your donors or your members or your volunteers. So if you are a slightly bigger organization and you are thinking, oh, we need a solution for actually all parts of our organization, not just our service users, then you might be looking at something in this blue section. If you are a smaller organization, or you are really only focused on the case management and impact side of things, we've included these databases in the orange section here, which are really just focused on impact. So they focus on the people you work with, the service users, how they engage with your service, and then what the impact of that is. And then we've included some other well-known ones at the bottom there, which we're referring to as bolt-on impact tools, where they are tools that are used to measure kind of distance traveled outcomes with your service users. But we wouldn't describe them as a whole kind of case management system in themselves. And some of these other products allow you to integrate these bolt-on tools into your databases. So this is just a quick overview. We'll be publishing the full matrix soon. And we've just got two
I'm
more
going to extend, Alex, if anybody can see that countdown, I won't close Zoom at that time. Hopefully I can override that, and there'll be a bit of time for any questions as well. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. These are much shorter sections anyway, so we can whiz through these really. But once you've chosen your database provider, they will work with you to have a look at the data that you've already got and get it into a kind of good place for it to be migrated into their database. So either that is taking data from your current database system, or your pens and paper and your Excel spreadsheets and putting it up into your new system. But the most important thing about this stage is the customization stage. It's very rare that you'll be able to just buy a database off the shelf and just start using it straight away, because you're so unique and the projects that you develop, that you deliver are really unique. You will need to work with the company to kind of set things up and customize for them. But the question that you really need to be thinking about is, how much in the future do you have to go back to them every time you need to change something, and what permissions do they give you to set things up for yourselves? You might not want to, you might not think you have the skills, and you might want them to do everything. So this is a really important conversation to have actually before you choose your database provider, but then again at this stage, whilst you're preparing your data and preparing to implement your database. And then getting all your user materials up and running and ready for each of your users that are going to be using your database. Then we've got a kind of test and train period. So we call it test, train, redevelop, train. So you'll need to test what the database company has set up for you with probably a small group of people, because you don't want to alienate everybody right at the start if things need ironing out. And we would suggest testing it with each one of your... Do I need to do anything about this, Kate? Oh, are you still there, Kate?
I'm still here.
Right.
I don't think I can override. So if you carry on, we'll all go back into the main room and people can ask some questions there.
Okay. Yeah, so this is just test it with each of your users, and if you use those user profiles that we were talking about, you'll be able to test whether or not the database actually delivers on what it is each user wants from that database. And then you'll need to go back and redevelop it a little bit more, just refine it, test it again, and then get everybody trained in it. But that's not the point at which training stops. You need to be thinking about how you're going to keep training live in your organization for new people that come to the organization, or whether there's a change in responsibilities, or if people aren't using it that frequently, they'll need refresher training. So all of that requires kind of scheduling and budget to do that. And then finally, you are at kind of the implementation stage. But sadly, that's not the end of the journey. It's almost like the start of your actual database journey, because once implemented, a database needs kind of care and attention to keep it going and to keep it useful. And you probably will have assigned somebody in your organization to do that, to work on the configuration that it needs, to always have a look at data quality, thinking about GDPR, whether people have given consent for their details to be on there, how and when you delete those people or renew their consent. You might start up a new project, or people might want the database to do something new. So all of this happens like once the database is implemented and up and running. So that work has to kind of continue. A good database means it needs some sort of long-term, tender, loving care in order to function properly and to get everything out of it that you need to get. So we are going to be publishing these resources, and Kate and Sorrel will direct you to them. But it would also be interesting if anybody's got any experiences in this group about databases that they've tried and been successful or not so successful with. That would be great. And also if you're perhaps using a system that we didn't mention in our overview of databases there, it would be also great to hear about that.